Hello y'all and welcome back to my Hello y'all and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a sort of analyzation video that I was inspired to do after watching a lovely young lady's video, specifically sort of deep diving into a particular episode of the show that we are going to be talking about today. She did a very wonderful job. It was a reaction video. She is someone who, she's very kawaii, J-fashion, that sort of aesthetic, so I will leave her video down below. Definitely recommend giving it a watch. But what inspired me to do this video was her video, and today we're going to be talking about TLC's What Not to Wear, which is a show that I had watched in the past and somewhat enjoyed. I'm very into style and fashion and all of that sort of thing. Your girl also skews very alternative, which is sort of the mindset where I'm coming from as I break down some of the reasons why I believe that this show and the premise and some of the mechanism techniques that it utilizes is a bit inherently toxic. I have a crap ton of notes here. I have no idea how long this video is gonna be. Please just bear with me. This is probably gonna get a little passionate, a little bit heated, because I am most definitely an advocate for you keep doing you, boo-boo. Especially when it comes to self-expression. Do your makeup how you want to do it. You know, wear a burlap bag and some like Christian Louboutin heels. If that is your thing, you do you. Live, own, and love your aesthetic. So going into this, the main episode, obviously the one that this young lady discussed, was Lolita on what not to wear. And there have been a few other very obvious subculture fashions that have been showcased on this show. One, very notably, is Toshi Salvino, who is a living art doll. She went on the show. They did a whole breakdown, and the show's premise is they take someone who has bad fashion and they go through the process of giving them a makeover. Now, before we go into the toxicity of this show, I would like to give where credit is due. As someone who has watched the show a myriad of episodes, I do want to admit that in certain aspects, in certain episodes, in certain cases, there are good things that come about this. For example, if you have someone who isn't sure how to dress for their body type, they go into that. For someone who is really struggling with their self-esteem, and this process helps them sort of come out of that subconscious shell, and they're able to embrace themselves and express themselves in a way that they didn't think that they could before. A lot of those episodes are very heartwarming, there have been a couple where I've cried because you have these young ladies who are like, I don't feel like I'm worth anything, and that's represented in how I dress. And then at the end of the episode, when they do the transformation, there's just this, this enlightenment of I am worth this, and those episodes and what that has done is very good and is merited, being, said that that's a good point of the show. Okay, that aside, we are going to be focusing mostly on how this show responds, reacts to, and interacts with their contestants, clients who are on the show that skew much more alternative. Because from an alternative outsider's perspective, looking at someone who dresses like me, they may think that I don't necessarily have a good grasp on how to dress myself. So, the premise of the show, the beginning in and of itself, is very predatory. Now, I understand with shows like this and everything like that, we got disclosures we're signing and all that jazz, so it's not as reality TV as it seems. A lot of it is scripted and everything like that. But even then, the way that these scenarios are presented is still very predatory. It starts with the two stylists, Stacey and Clinton, who are very, very well-known, renowned stylists, who observe this person who has atrocious fashion sense, and then they have been filming them without their whatever, don't know about disclosure agreements there. Without their knowledge, family members usually typically submit, help my sister, help my mother, help my whatever. And then they essentially ambush them at some sort of pre-done scenario and are like, hey, your style sucks. Here's $5,000, but to get the $5,000, we're gonna throw away all your old clothes. Now, obviously, it is reality TV. Reality TV or trash TV, something that I enjoy consuming, is something that is going for shock value. And what this show is initially banking on is that sort of subconscious, natural reaction that we as human beings have to judge people. So the show is based on judging someone on their looks and judging them to the point of saying that they don't look good. It makes for great TV. It's kind of a sort of, reasoning to have a show like that. But Stacey and Clinton in the episode that the young lady went through, they're doing all these puns of like, oh, it's a hurricane disaster of fashion, a typhoon monsoon of audacity and atrociousness. You're like, wow, tell us how you really feel. Jeez. There's a lot of just shock and awe for Stacey and Clinton, who are all like, oh, like they have never seen fashion as bad as this. And they're like offended by how this person dresses. And sort of I have notes that I want to I've written points down. And this is, I wrote, the sole purpose of the show is to judge these people, exploit their insecurities, and convince them they do not fit in with society. Or at least the society that Stacey and Clinton want this person to ascribe to. It's essentially coming up to this person and being like, you don't know how to dress, we know how to dress people, we need to fix you. And I understand, style is very subjective. What is considered style or fashion or whatever. So when it comes to whatever your style is, typically some tweaking maybe need to be made. I used to dress like this way back when. My style has been refined to where I take this look and it is more aesthetically pleasing than how I used to put pieces together. So in someone's style journey, there is a kind of a need to just sort of refine and tweak and educate and really figure out what works for you and what looks good together. So I'm all for style reform in that sense, where it's like, just being able to look more put together and really being able to execute the alternative, the look that you want to present in the most pleasing way. Another thing is that clothes are a fantastic way of being able to express yourself. Y'all know that your girl is all about going out and anywhere. We got green hair, we got 6-inch platforms, we got whatever going on here. All my varying aesthetics are an extension of myself. I am presenting myself to the world how I want to be perceived, as ethereal, otherworldly, and vaguely threatening. Okay, going off on the theme of someone's look is inherently bad. This is ultimately establishing that their opinions, Stacey and Clinton's, are correct. Just because they are stylists does not mean their style is for everyone. This is sort of a big issue that I have when it comes to Stacey and Clinton approaching a more alternative client. Just because a look or an aesthetic or their style skews more alternative or more subculture does not inherently mean it's bad. It may need to be executed in a better way, and that is where it comes to, tweaking and refining and sort of taking what that person likes and making it into a better, more refined. Take a shot every time I say refined. Actually, don't. I do not advocate for that. I do not recommend doing that. But the concept of taking what that person's style actually is and turning it into a full, smooth, cohesive look is kind of lost on Stacey and Clinton as they're sort of tripping over themselves to get this person to Macy's or to Dillard's so that can take them and be like, oh, well, you like floral print. Here's this really atrocious, awful dress from Macy's that costs $298 that has an awful floral print on it, but it's you because it's floral. There just seems to be this narrative of Stacey and Clinton kind of pushing and shoving and fitting these alternative people into their perceived notion of what is style and what is fashion and what looks good, rather than focusing on that person's individual style. It's like, okay, this person is gothic. They don't necessarily look very put together for some reason or another. Let's kind of investigate that gothic theme and refine it and tweak it and make it good. Instead, it's like, no, you're gothic? That's atrocious. Act your age or act more mature, or you shouldn't be dressing that sexy because you're so young. It's like, oh, you're gothic? Well, here's a shift dress with absolutely no shape, no ode to being gothic, but it's gothic and it falls under that because it's black. It's like, no. Black does not a garment make gothic or alternative. And now I do understand the need in some cases developing a business style as well as your everyday style. There are just some scenarios where you can't go into them wearing full-on frilly gothic Lolita garb. But even then, as someone who dresses very alternatively every day, you can find ways and find pieces that are work or business appropriate while still skewing alternative. I mean, Killstar has a lot of beautiful dresses and skirts and tops that still have that aesthetic, but are still appropriate. But instead of delving into that, what they do is they're just like, no, 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 no. You can't do this. You can't be this style. We have to take that and we have to completely misconstrue it into what we want you to wear. Another thing that I think is really bad here, because clothing and appearance, it is very personal. Clothing is sort of, I don't want to say a shield, but it's a physical representation of how we feel on the inside. And with this episode that this young lady really went through, it was very attacking. It was very patronizing. It was very just no kind words, no even attempt to understand where she was coming from. That's a big part of my problem. If Stacey and Clinton don't understand a certain fashion subset, they just make fun of it because they're like, we have no idea what this is and it's atrocious. This particular young lady clearly had different elements of Japanese subculture fashion. And Stacey and Clinton are just tearing it apart. I hated every time Stacey was all like, the young lady was like, well, I like this. And Stacey's all like,
well, maybe we should get you out of wearing a costume from Japan.
Or she was talking about, she was like, well, I like this look. And she's like, in Japan. It's just like this whole disconnect between not even trying to do any effort of understanding that different style so that they can then better incorporate it into more appropriate streetwear vibe. Like, the one thing that really broke my heart, and the young lady who did this video that inspired me, is they pulled up this one bag this lady had, and it was this beautiful, very punk teddy bear bag that was plaid. It was very visual K, very Harajuku J-rock fashion. They're like, this is awful. It makes me want to hit it. And one of them like pounds on it, type thing. And the young lady is literally begging them, please teach me. Show me how I can incorporate something like that into my style. And they're just like, no, pitch it, and just toss it into the garbage can. It's like, are you even listening to your client? I mean, if this lady was paying these people to style her, is that how they would treat her? Because just because something isn't necessarily in your typical wheelhouse doesn't make it bad. And ignorance of a different subculture fashion sense is not, ignorance isn't an excuse. And for people who are aware of a lot of fashion subcultures, we're kind of discussing Lolita because that was this young lady, over there, it's not, even here, people who wear it, it's not a costume. It is a legitimate alternative subset fashion subculture. It's not considered a costume. It's what they wear. It's the fashion and style that they like. And like I'm saying, just because these two people don't understand it or can't comprehend it doesn't make it inherently bad or any more of a costume. If these people were truly catering to their clients, they would focus on looking into the fashion, looking on the elements that they like, and focusing on trying to refine that, do those elements. Instead, they want to push them out, shove them out in the world and say, all right, we want you to buy pencil skirts. We want you to buy heels. We want you to buy shift dresses and all these things. There's an absolute disconnect between the way these people start and what they end up looking like in the end. And going back to the whole getting rid of their clothes. Now, the young lady in the video, she said that apparently you do have an opportunity to possibly go back and go through and pick out things that you want. But even with that happening, the idea of getting rid of all your clothes is such a awful tactic. It's essentially going in and stripping this person of their physical identity and telling them that it's wrong and it's bad. I mean, I cringe every time I'd watch that segment on honestly any of them, because Stacey and Clinton hold up a piece and they're like, this is awful. How dare you consider this looking good? And they just tearing each of these clothing pieces a new one without even trying to understand where it came from, why they bought it. They do have the segment where they have them come out in an outfit and have them say why they like it. That usually doesn't go any better because they tear that a new one too and basically berate them and tell them all the reasons why it's awful. And the problem I have with this whole stripping away, I understand it's reality TV, it's TLC, it is shock value. But in taking their clothes away and having that only be, that being the catch to them getting that $5,000 it's a tactic used in such like conversion camps where they are stripping away their identity and being like, this is the past you. This you was bad. This you was wrong. You cannot associate with that anymore. It's almost like, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's almost like a brainwashing technique, and it's very psychologically traumatic. And then I always go into just the whole, being ignorant of the subculture fashions. I understand dressing like this isn't for anyone. And we know the show does this for views, but when you have like a super crazy, whatever, alternative gothic person and they're like, oh my goodness, how could they wear all that black? And then they do that transition from gothic to normal. That's another thing I have issues with. Normal is subjective. And if someone has to dress a certain way to fit in with society, that's a problem. Yes, we do put out in our physical appearance, people do judge and sort of, that's our first impressions, but we should be able to dress how we want and be able to be judged on our merits rather than the clothes we put on ourselves. And then also the whole concept, this whole ignorance on subculture kind of goes into the whole thought process that, oh, alternative can't be stylish. Alternative can't be fashion. It's just this crazy out there subculture that can't be accepted. Y'all heard of Jade the Libra? That young lady is fierce. She takes alternative fashion and she rocks that shiz out. I dare you to look at her and the way she styles her pieces and tell me that she is not fashionable and stylish. Even Lena Bugs, I watch her and Jade the Libra all the time because they are so fierce and so just, they have their subculture, they have their style, and they execute it so beautifully. They're people that I would look at, and were I the stylist, and be like, okay, this is the vibe you're kind of going to look at. Let's look at these two people who do it so well, and how we can take their tips and tricks and incorporate it into the look that you want to achieve. But no, we just write it off as being, you're trying to be a vampire, you're trying to be crazy, that's just not acceptable. You need to accessorize with a chunky necklace from Bubble Bar. Another problem I have is obviously the condescension. Is that a word? How condescending they are, as well as how patronizing they are when what they do is they strip this person of all their clothes. They're kind of like, they go through and they're like, okay, what do you like about this outfit? Well, it's bad. This is what we recommend you wear. And then they send them off into the whatever to go shopping without really investigating their style, without really figuring out what they want, what they like. It's like, all right, well, what kind of body shape do you have? What silhouettes do you like? Do you like ruffles? Do you like color? Do you like, those base things that build the backbone to fashion? They don't even address. And then as they're watching this poor person go through and pick things, they're like, psh, peh, did she not listen to anything we said? And I'm like, you didn't tell them anything worth listening to or worth keeping in your brain. They just seem to get upset and frustrated and discouraged when the person isn't making the choices they want them to make. Oh, it's not fashionable to them, therefore it's wrong. You are literally taking the show is literally taking these people's opinions and enforcing it on to the clients. Clothing is something that should make you happy. So being ostracized and being critiqued for every single thing you pick, you're like, look, I like this skirt. I picked this out. And they're like,
Psh, what? No, that's not fashion. That's not style. That's not cute. What are you doing?
It just seems counterproductive to this person's actual growth. And while I do admit a lot of the show is good, has good results, I am mainly coming from someone who has watched the episodes with alternative people. This is more coming from a place of how they interact with these subcultures and how they aren't able to take that talent, that expertise, and use it in a different way than just mainstream fashion. Another problem I have that was brought up in the video was the fact that if you're alternative, if you dress like a Lolita, if you dress gothic, if you dress witchy or whatever, it is somehow a fetish. We dress this way because we are some sort of deviant. And this sort of kind of is underlying and cementing that concept that they're just really freaking ignorant when it comes to other fashion subcultures. Like the young lady was like, okay, just because I dress like a Lolita means I'm a deviant, it just showcases the ignorance and the unwillingness to even want to learn about these things or even delve into why, the actual reasons why the person chooses this sort of fashion. Then the other thing that I hate about this whole, what does dressing alternatively really mean? One of the tropes in this show when dealing with alternative, take a shot every time I say alternative, oh my goodness, is the assumption that someone dresses like this because they're trying to hide something, they have low self-esteem, they don't love themselves enough to, dress normally because they're trying to get attention or they're trying to compensate for their low self-esteem by wearing crazy clothes. And in some cases, that may be part of it. I know I started dressing like this because I wanted to be edgy and I wanted to be out there and I wanted attention. Now I wear it because I look fan-tucking fabulous. But even going into that with that inherent initial assumption that someone is dressing like this because of, low self-esteem and you'd be so much more beautiful without all that makeup. Basically mocking and pigeonholing their self-expression. Just because someone wears a shellac ton of makeup doesn't mean they have low self-esteem. It's how they want to express themselves. It's like me looking at Stacey and being like,
all right, Stacey, why are you really carrying that $5,000 bag?
Is it because you have low self-esteem? Are you overcompensating for something?
And just this unwillingness to accept the fact that this person is dressing like this because they like it. This particular style is what makes them happy. And to completely ignore the happiness or the joy that they get from this, taking it away from them, saying it's costumey, it's cheap, it's ugly, and that inferring that they're wearing it for a specific reason, just that innate like, oh, you have low self-esteem, or oh, you're doing this because you want attention. That's the only reason why you don't dress like a normal person. It's really freaking rude. I mean, come on. It's like, why when someone dresses alternity, does it have to be because we're hiding something or don't like ourselves? And then that procs into the predatory nature of this, that they are using people's emotions to get them to change. It's like they try to get them to admit something. They're just throwing something out there. It's like those charlatan fortune tellers and those psychics who are like,
I sense that you have low self-esteem.
and the person is like,
Yes, well, I have suffered with that.
and then Stacey and Clinton jump on it and they're like,
Well, you dress like this because you have low self-esteem.
my self-esteem took a long time to get there, be popping. I dress like this because I know I look good. I dress like this because it makes me feel fabulous. The predatory nature of using someone's emotions against them to get them to change into conforming what you think they should look like is predatory, is nasty, and is a tactic they use in pretty much every episode. There's always a emotional breakthrough. And I mean, part of my major problem with this, which is a point that I've made over and over again in this video, is just the ignorant unwillingness to truly understand their client. It's like if I were a stylist and I had a client and I got upset because they didn't want to have green hair or dress in all pleather with 6-inch platform boots, because I'd be like, but wait, that's what style and fashion is to me. Why don't you accept my interpretation of what looks good? So you have Stacey and Clinton who are just forcing and shoving and just really just taking their perceived notion of what looks good. I mean, it really is. Style is subjective. Not everybody likes the same thing. Not everybody wants to dress the same way. And if they have ladies that come on there that absolutely love the transformation, that's fantastic. But when you have these episodes where someone is clearly uncomfortable, clearly unhappy, and then you're sitting there just telling them, oh no, but you look great, you look fast, how dare you say you don't look good? And it's a how dare you say you don't look good because you haven't conformed to what we think looks good. There is just this complete bafflement of, why don't they like it? What went wrong? What went wrong was you not being willing to listen to them about what they really wanted, and then still pushing them toward this false look that is not really truly representative of what they want to be, because y'all are too all up in wanting to force your aesthetics onto someone. And ultimately, when it comes to these ones, it's like you cannot help someone feel confident by completely changing who they are or who they want to be. It's just this tone deaf level of like, I know they had one young lady who came on and she had piercings on and they were like, why would you do that to your face? It's like, it's their face, and who are you to judge them? It boils down to a sense of, if someone, I understand I don't want to say need, but I understand where the sense of style help comes from. I would have benefited from style help back in the day. Whereas in this sense, it's just this patronizing, nasty deconstruction of who they are in order to break them down and put them into what is society's conceived notion of what a person should look like in order to be accepted and considered worthwhile, considered an adult, considered mature, considered pooled together. And in the end, it is reality TV show. So the more intense, extreme makeovers are going to be the ones that pull the views in. So they are going to reach out to, and I understand you have to submit or something like that. I don't know that whole situation, but they are going to have these clients on here that are more alternative, that do have strange fashion that can then be exploited and used to show this dramatic transformation from total crazy deviant person to, look, society's standard. If someone truly feels good about themselves in what they're wearing, who are we to judge them? It goes into makeup, it goes into whatever. If they feel good, who are we to tell them that they don't look good, that their fashion is ugly? This just perpetuates that continuous cycle of toxic norms where these standards are held that if you do not conform to them, you are somehow inferior or just somehow less better than someone. I mean, basically this whole show is a big giant ego stroke for Stacey and Clinton to be all like, well, our style fashion sense is the best and you all suck. And I do heavily take object to that. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. Just watching that one lady's video reminded me all the reasons why I had issues with this show. It was just so toxic and so pushy and so tone deaf and so just the level of ignorance that they weren't even, because if you're a fashion person, you are fairly, I feel, knowledgeable in different fashions, in different style, because there's so much crossover and underlapping and inspiration, you know, and to just really take this one thing and be all like, well, it is in Japan. I mean, how white can you get? It rubbed me the wrong way, and I wanted to kind of get my thoughts out there. I would love to hear what you all have to say about this. It is something that I'm very passionate about. I am going to be doing a video talking about why alternative communities are also toxic. So if you enjoyed this, definitely stay around for that. This just got me all up. Getting me all up in my feels. But definitely let me know what you think down below on this whole thing. I hope it wasn't too mishmashed. I had notes, but I knew I was gonna get a little bit ranty, a little bit heated. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah.